Hello, everybody, and welcome to the User Research Strategist podcast. I am your host, Nikki Anderson, and I am joined today here by Ned Dwyer. Hi, Ned.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. I am so excited to talk about the topic for today, which is the super scary democratization topic.
It's a
Which,
big one.
yeah, I feel like just the word can scare half of the people away from listening to something like this or intrigue them. So we'll see.
Yes.
Before we dive into democratization, do you mind just giving a quick introduction to our audience today?
Sure. So my name is Ned Dwyer. I'm co-founder and CEO of Great Question. Great Question is an all-in-one UX research platform built to democratize research at scale at the enterprise. So we combine a best-in-class research CRM to build and manage a panel of your own customers or recruit from other panel providers like Respondent with all the research methods, surveys, interviews, and prototype tests, and then a research repository all in one place. That's me. That's us.
Amazing. I do have to ask you one other question before we dive into it, which is what color was your hair when you started at Great Question?
It's so funny you asked that. I was looking back through photos the other day, and there's a photo of me with a friend's kid, and the kid just turned 8, I think, and my hair is black. You can barely see any gray in it. Now, yeah, it's definitely much more. It's not even salt and pepper at this point. It's definitely. But I think it was well underway by the time I started Great Question. But the pandemic did a number on me. We're 4 years in, so yeah, grayer and gray by the day.
To be fair, I don't even know what my natural hair color is anymore. So, hey, amazing. So, yeah, let's get into the topic today of democratization. But before we dive into specifics, I'd love for you to set just a baseline of what democratization means to you because it could be so many different things. So, do you mind
Mm.
just going through your definition of it?
So I think for me, democratization is helping everyone in your organization better understand your customers through UX research. It's very broad. And we talk about empowering organizations to decide how much or how little they want to democratize. And so at its worst, or at its least, I should say, I think democratization is, do we want to democratize access to insights generated by UX researchers? And I think everyone can agree with that, that yeah, of course we want to put those insights in the hands of everyone in the organization. And then it's a gradient from there, right? Okay, now do we want to empower people to run research? And if we do, which methods do we want them to go and use? Maybe they're able to do surveys or prototype tests or customer interviews. Maybe it depends on what training they've undergone. Maybe it depends about which audience they've gone and run the research with, and or whether or not they need an approval before they can actually go and send that project out into the wild. And then yeah, the final piece then is who are they actually going to run the research with? And so you might decide, look, it's only with non-customers, or it's with internal stakeholders, or it's with only Gen Pop within our customer base. And so I think when you look at it through this lens of, look, we're all trying to put customer insights at the heart of every decision that's being made, because there are a million decisions made every day in your business, and only so many can be covered by researchers. Then it comes down to what are the guardrails we want to put in place to ensure that those people don't shoot their own foot, or the foot of the company, or of our customers. So yeah, so there's my definition.
Yeah, and I love that. And I agree. I think that there's such a spectrum within democratization, and there's a lot
Mhm.
of assumption that democratization just means giving up control of user research completely and
Mhm.
kind of walking away
Mhm.
and saying, I give up, just run your own stuff. But I'm curious kind of what you've seen in terms of trends as well, because I remember 10 years ago, democratization was like no go. You didn't talk about it. It was super skeptical because like research was almost like academic in a way. And so I'm
Mhm.
curious, like,
Mhm.
how have things changed now based on that like earlier skepticism to what you're seeing now when it comes to democratization?
Yeah, so when I started the kind of pre-work for Great Question, I obviously was doing a ton of research myself to try and figure out like what actually is the opportunity, and where the problems exist and what could our strategy be. And I remember having a conversation with someone that I considered a friend, who was a really senior product manager. I really respected this guy. I still do, let's be clear. But I remember talking about what we were thinking about. And he's like, wait a minute, are you talking about you're trying to democratize research? And I was like, well, yeah, I think, I gave the reasons why I thought that was important. He's like, look, I don't want to talk about this. You shouldn't do this. This is bad. I'm not even going to go into the reasons why. And I think at the time when we started, so this would have been in the late 2020, I think the idea of democratization was probably 50-50 of people that were supportive of it, people that were against it. We recently did a state of research democratization report, a research study, a great question. Over 300 people participated, mostly vast majority actually very, very senior folks from very large organizations like IBM and Intuit, Walmart, and all sorts of places. And actually, the sentiment was that 76% of people now support democratization, and 96% support when you consider the definition of do we want to democratize UX insights, just purely the insight side of things. So I think it's changed a lot over time. And I'm actually surprised that the types of organizations that are accepting of it, I think previously it was very much early stage startups, maybe series A, B, and C, where they didn't have a lot of structure, and they might actually decide we don't want UX researchers. Or definitely, I know a bunch of organizations that hired UX researchers and ultimately decided that that wasn't a fit for their model, and then they've gone on democratized. And so I think that kind of makes sense in that they're low maturity, in a variety of senses, organizations. But actually, I think what's been really surprising to me from a trend perspective is the very large organizations who are doing it. So our largest customer from a volume of research that's conducted and democratization perspective is democratizing to 16,000 employees,
Wow.
supporting every single one to be able to run research at the drop of a hat. And we've got all the guardrails in place to prevent them from it being the Wild West, right? From actually putting these controls in so that people aren't hurting themselves or the customer. And I don't think that that would have been possible 5 years ago because I think it was this dangerous third rail that nobody wanted to touch. But also, I don't think the tools or technology existed to even empower it. And I've seen a lot of organizations that have tried again and again, and they've just had to throw bodies at it to try to figure out how do we do all this, do all the steps. And anyway, definitely talking my own book a little bit there. But so I think those are the big trends in democratization is that I think there's a certain maturity that's come up where people understand all the negative sides of democratization can actually be overcome. It just requires energy and effort and the right tool stack and the right training to put the guardrails in place so we don't do all the bad things that can happen.
Do you want to get all of your user research questions answered all while hanging out on your couch in sweatpants? No need to join any live webinars and hope that your question gets answered. No need to Google a million different things and sift through some scattered advice that you don't really know is valid or reliable. Not anymore. I know it sounds too good to be true, but I promise it isn't, because if you become a paid Substack subscriber, you get access immediately to a community filled with user researchers that I am in every single day answering questions. Not only can you hang out on your couch, feel less alone as a user researcher, and get all of your questions answered, not only by an expert, but by a bunch of other user researchers with amazing perspectives and experience, you can do all of that on your couch in sweatpants, and I will be alongside there with you every step of the way. So join my paid Substack, get immediate access, and we can relax together solving all of your user research problems. See you there.
I'm curious because I know a lot of people struggle with that decision point of should I or should I not, especially when
Mhm.
the idea of democratization goes beyond making insights accessible and into the training, into that space of allowing, that's not the best word, but enabling other people to do research themselves. Is there any sort of kind of advice that you have for people who are teetering on that edge of whether or not they should step into that kind of space of that enablement?
Yeah, I mean, I think my perspective is that research is already democratized. It's just not evenly distributed. And so there are already product managers and marketers and engineers and all sorts of people around your organization that are actively talking to customers, whether you want to call that UX research or feedback or just talking to customers, it's up to you. This is already happening and you can't prevent it. Like it's just, there's no way in world you're able to do that. And there's such demand in your organization for answers to questions that everyone's got. Like there are a million questions that your organization has every day, and your PMs are going and making decisions based on whatever they've got. And so you've kind of got a decision here to make, which is either these questions are going to go unanswered, or you can think that they're going to go unanswered, or they're going to get answered by people's gut instinct and by maybe analytics or talking to their neighbor, or you can be in a role where you actually facilitate this. And I think that's actually really powerful because it sort of centers the UX researcher as the one to go to, the trusted advisor for how to help the rest of the organization think about these things. And then you get to be the one that defines the guardrails. I think we've seen a bunch of organizations where we've been brought in by not by the UX research team, but being brought in by product teams or design teams who are like, okay, well, you didn't want to do this. You didn't support us. We need to do this. So we're going and buying a tool and you can use it or you cannot use it. It's up to you. But we're basically routing around these people in marketplace pilots. We're disintermediating the UX research team. And so I think that's a negative place to be. And so I think that ultimately, again, democratization is here. It's not going anywhere. And the best thing to do is to figure out on what terms it's coming into your organization.
It almost flips democratization on its head, like all those negative sides, by empowering the researcher to meet people where they are and like meet democratization as it is and as it will be inevitably. Because I know I ran around in circles trying to prevent democratization from happening when I
Mm,
was like earlier
mm,
on in my career because I was so scared of it.
mm.
And so, which is, as you say, literally it would be a full-time job of like for a whole team to prevent people from talking to customers.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And for what, right?
Yeah.
I think look, we care about the craft, we care about the quality of the insights being produced and then the decisions being made about that stuff. And all that stuff is really, really important. But I think you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. And I think in that lens, you're like, cool, let's create the frameworks and the guardrails. And we're seeing more and more organizations. Here's another trend for you, more and more organizations where there is a default expectation that everyone is talking to customers at least on a weekly basis, and that's coming from the top down. And if you're the department over here that's saying, "Well, we don't believe in that, and we're not going to support that, it's going to happen," but the CEO is saying this, I've got bad news for you because it's going to happen. And so, but it's also an awesome opportunity to say, great, yes, let's do this. Do you know what we're going to need to empower this? Look, we're going to need more training resources. We need more guidance. We need more guardrails. We need to set more policy. We need to bring everyone on for the ride to protect everyone. And that's a huge opportunity for anyone in their career.
Yeah. I mean, what you said when it comes from the top down, I mean, as a researcher, I was literally standing in the way of people getting promoted and people getting raises because I
Mm,
am like taking away the capacity for them to fulfill their literal role as being
mm,
defined by somebody who's a whole lot more important in an organization than I
mm.
am. So yeah, it's a really important thing to remember. Like people aren't just running around trying to ruin your life as a researcher. There's like reasons behind
No.
this.
Yes, yes, yeah. And I think it's equally they may not be aware of some of the downsides,
Yeah.
right? So there's still some education there. It's not to say that you can't educate and guide them, but yeah, they're just trying to build better products and build bigger businesses and all these other goals.
All on the same team. It's like continue to remind
Yes,
yourself.
yes, yeah, 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 yes, yeah, yeah.
I'm curious for people who, because like a lot of my struggles with democratization and a lot of what I hear are people who don't have access to tools and resources. So do you have recommendations for how people can build the case for getting more training resources or tools like Great Question? Like what are some ways that they can build that case for it, especially if people are like already doing the democratized activities and you're kind of like, but we need something better.
I think it's about putting together some high level thoughts for leadership to help them understand what are some of the challenges that we're likely to go and run into, right? And so like define that journey that anyone is going to go on through research and where these sort of barriers might exist. And so I start actually with the recruitment side because recruitment is 90% of the work. And I think everyone understands the idea of garbage in, garbage out. We need to go and get high quality people, but also, I find in most of these organizations, everyone these days cares about data privacy and security, and they also care about customer experience. And so, if the more regulated you are, the easier it is to push on the data privacy and security because it's just it's a non-starter. If you need HIPAA compliance, you've got regulated by FINRA and financial services, you've got GDPR, you've got CCPA for California. It's like that case becomes very easy that look, we should be using a more formal CRM to go and facilitate this stuff to make sure that everything's in place. And there's all the things then around data retention and ensure we've got consent forms and all that kind of stuff that we're not breaking the law. And I think, especially when you write that down, I think people are generally pretty supportive of like, okay, we better go and do this stuff now that's been written down. And then the recruitment side, then for me, needing tooling is it is so manual and laborious, and nobody really wants to do it. Everyone really wants to just be able to press a button and schedule an interview. And when you're not providing tooling for this, the average organization that we go and work with, it takes them 8 weeks to do a recruit because they've got to go and work with someone to pull a list. Their marketing send out an email, then they've got the back and forth, and maybe legal has to approve it. It's like, get that out of the way, and it should take less than 20 minutes to go and fill a study. And so that's just buying back, huge portions of people's time. And I think so we're talking about efficiency, time, we're talking about reducing legal risk. And the other one I would say is headcount is, typically in organizations, and in fact, this is the organization that scaled to 16,000 people who do research. They had a team of, I think it was 10 recruiters. They were full-time recruiting for people across the organization to help them better understand their customers. And so there's not a bad ratio. I mean, they were able to do, I think, 10,000 customer interviews a year with that crew. We've now helped them to significantly multiply that by orders of magnitude. And so you could look at your organization and say, in order to support everyone running research, here's the number of headcount that we'd need if we're going to be supporting it. And I think there's still going to be a cap on that. The alternative is let's go and train everyone to do it in the right way and facilitate that. That's how I would think about that. But also work with vendors. Like if you think this is a vendor that you want to go and work with, I hate being called a vendor, but I acknowledge that I am. I'm like, there's so much more than that, but okay. Is work with them because they've inevitably got business case documents to how to think about ROI and why you need a tool to bring everyone along for the ride. Let them do the work for you.
Yeah, that's actually a really smart thing to say about looking into your vendors and asking them, apologies for the vendor word, asking them for those business cases, because that can help you build, even if it's not 100% relevant, that will help you build a business case for your specific organization, the more resources you have.
Yes. Yeah, great call. Because I think everyone has a different business case. There's no like one size fits all. It's like, what are you trying to do? And what does your organization care about? They might not care. They're like, cool, throw more bodies at it. Sounds great. We love doing that. We want to hire. We want to, or then maybe they care about data privacy and security. Maybe they don't. Maybe they care about some tool consolidation. Like everyone's different. So yeah, great call.
Yeah, really tailoring that. And I think that also can help people, like thinking through these business cases and thinking through those questions can also help people understand, are they ready to democratize or not, especially with the resources that they have? Because I remember starting democratization and then having to go back on myself because I didn't have the resources that I should have had for the plans that I made.
Yes. Yeah, that's a really good call. It makes me think someone should go and produce that guide for what you need when you're going to start democratizing, right? It's like you're the checks and balances that are in place. These are the questions to ask everyone. But yeah, your CEO is not thinking about all the ramifications necessarily of this decision. He or she is just like, let's go and do this thing. And then you all figure out how that needs to happen, And so that's where your role is as the trusted advisor.
Hey everyone, I have been taking some business courses recently and am launching a new membership that's all about how user researchers can become more business savvy, more strategic, and more of a business partner in their organizations. One of the biggest questions that I get asked is, hey, my organization isn't really mature. It has like a low user research maturity level. Please do not let the maturity of your organization dictate your user research career. That's what I did. Because I was in a lower user research maturity, I kind of let myself stagnate and I didn't really learn new things. And with that, my skills kind of like deteriorated. I lost a lot of time that I could have used to learn really, really important skills because they weren't necessarily applicable to my organization at that time. But guess what? I got fired. And then it didn't really matter what maturity level my organization was at because I was no longer there. And I wished that I had taken the time to learn some of these skills because they would have been applicable at the next places that I went into. I know that it can be hard sometimes and frustrating when you're in a low maturity organization and you want to push things, you want to learn new things, but please, please, please don't let your current organization and their levels of maturity impact your future career, because I promise you, you will not be there forever and you will need the skills that you need to learn in the future. Promise, 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 especially with the user research industry changing and us hopefully moving into that more strategic space and operating more as business partners and innovation partners to our organizations. Also, if you want more details on my membership and how to become a little bit more business oriented as a researcher, check out the link that I have. And I hope that helps.
I'm curious because it wouldn't be a podcast episode these days if we didn't bring AI into the whole mix.
Mm.
But I'm curious if you think that AI has impacted democratization in any way, which is very broad implication. So yeah, what are your thoughts on AI and democratization?
Yeah, I think it's kind of impacted in two ways. Like one way is that I think that with the rise of AI, more people around the organization think that, oh, this should fast track us running
Yeah.
more research and including more customer insights at the heart of every decision. And so people are thinking, what tool are we using? And people are encouraged, organizations are encouraged to find that tool which is going to fast track that. And I think that's a good thing in general. It's like, cool, how can we leverage this new technology to make ourselves more efficient? Awesome. It's not a perfect solution. I think the products that exist out there today have pluses and minuses. I think, but finding the right partner on that stuff is really important. And when you can, then I think it can be a generally pretty healthy and positive thing. I think that previously, I think calls for democratization, people have accused those calls of leading to layoffs and redundancies and all sorts of things there. And I think maybe that's true to some extent. I think I'm a little bit skeptical of that, like how much that's actually the reason why, the core reason why these things have happened. And I think with AI, I think it's kind of similar, is that look, it's going to make people more efficient. And I don't think necessarily people are thinking, oh, I can get an AI researcher or an AI moderator, and now we need less researchers or research ops. I actually think the future is going to be that we're going to need more people. It's going to generate more demand for research and research ops, because if a product manager, as a former product manager, if a product manager can get this outcome doing some method, imagine what we could do if we had, an actual experienced, with an academic background researcher in that role. We need more people like that, and that are answering the strategic questions of the organization, not just those sort of like at the edges of the organization. And then I think the flip side to this is all the opportunity that I see is for that AI is going to completely change the industry in so many ways, where you'll be able to type in a simple prompt and it will generate an entire study for you that will include the screener, the goals, the sample size, the incentive amounts, the right email targeting, that it's customized to do the outreach to that particular customer segment, which it's already identified for you. It may then go and actually run the research for you and then go and produce an insight report. And that sounds pretty futuristic, but it's actually not that far from where we are today. And so now we think about, all right, well, then what is the role of a UX researcher in that process? And I think that's ultimately about quality control, ensuring that every step in that flow actually is producing the highest quality output, and then figuring out how they can leverage this army of AI researchers to make their work more impactful in less time and allow them to go and answer. Like I keep referring to these million questions every organization has. Cool. Now the UX researcher can be centered as answering more of these in a high quality way because they've got significantly more capacity. Yeah, that's my thoughts on AI.
Yeah, yeah. I honestly, another thing that I'm like, why is everybody so concerned? Because if we could become efficient, like, wouldn't it be nice to have like a 4-day work week for everybody? Because
Huh.
we can get our
Yep.
work done so much faster. Like, let's look at some positives here. But
Yes.
I completely agree as well. Like, it will allow researchers to step more into that like a business role rather than sticking with some of that tactical, like you talk about recruitment. Just if you don't have a tool,
Yes.
like that is the worst possible thing that you could possibly like spend your time on, because not only is it soul draining for you as a person, but it's
Mm,
also such like useless work that is like not at all valuable in the end, because you can't be like, congratulations, you recruited 7 people. Like nobody cares about
mm.
that, you know?
Nobody cares.
Yeah.
Nobody cares. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, good
and
call.
so yeah, and I'm curious as well, because you talk about how to put up guardrails in particular to help people with, not hurting the customer, not hurting the quality of the research. And I want to know, like, with respect to great questions specifically, like what are some guardrails that you help people put into place that you have found to be super effective?
Yeah. So it exists all the way through the funnel of like the journey of running a research project. It starts with let's make sure we've got the right participants who we have the right to contact. And so we pioneered this, 4 years ago where we have an eligibility setting to decide who can and can't be contacted in your customer base. That includes, who's been contacted recently, so we're not spamming people by, pinging them again and again, or who's participated recently, so we're not talking to the same five people every week. And then it includes who's got access to this person, even like which team. Maybe it's just the research team that has access to admins. Maybe it's the product team, like however you want to split that up. And you can set your own custom parameters around how that stuff works. So that's great. And then the next piece is like we think about great participant experience. And so we want to define how we even contact those people. So now we're inviting them to participate, say it's in a customer interview, rather than sending it out to 10,000 customers for 5 interviews, we can batch send them. And so we send them out to just enough people so we're not wasting anyone's time. So that participant experience is also a good guardrail. And then people opt in to participate, and we can set limits on how many people you can be contacted in general, how many people can participate. Because no one really needs to run 100 customer interviews to answer a question like, what are you doing? And then what's the incentive amount that you're providing for these people, which is really important in all contexts, but definitely important in some of our like medical device customers, where they're like, look, this is a doctor, these are public health workers. There's like all these kind of things where they've got different use cases for. And then it's the methodologies, which methods you can choose. So maybe it's just you just want moderated sessions, or maybe you want to keep everyone away from surveys because they're so easy to abuse. And then I think the final piece here is then the approval flow stuff. So being able to decide, like ultimately get a research ops person to say, yes, this is approved. You can now send this out as a good guardrail. I think there's a lot more we can bring in here. We also redact PII from all your records so people can't find email addresses and last names and things like that. But the next level of stuff that we're working on allows you to identify interviews where leading questions are being asked. So we can already redact this or recommend against this in like interview guides and surveys, but actually doing it after the fact. And equally in research reports that people are producing, finding leading language that's in there or things that maybe aren't backed up by evidence and encouraging them to include evidence or proposing evidence that could go and push towards that solution or that recommendation. I think that's the future. And that's where, again, where I think that AI can do something that's so much more powerful because we don't have the a number of hours in the day to keep track of all these things. And so we need what a machine's going to help us for. And I think, yeah, that's where we're heading. So yeah, those are some guardrails we've got today.
Yeah, that's amazing because I know that a lot of researchers bulk at democratization because of the sheer amount of hours that you have to put into that quality control. And like being able to like retrospectively redact information that somebody might have asked that wasn't ideal, like that leading question or having that in the report writing process would save researchers so much time for the quality control.
Yeah. Yeah. We effectively think about it like a letter grade, right? The output of this, the quality of this interview is an A, a B, a C, a D, an F. And the machine can do that for you, which empowers the researcher to have a lot more time. But the machine is not just autonomously operating. I mean, it is, but actually it's operating also with the guardrails that the researcher decides. How do they want to respond to these types of queries? When do they want to? If they don't believe in giving people an F for an interview. I know that when I was, first in a serious product role running interviews, I'm sure that I would have got many Fs, and it would have actually guided me to do better research and understand and give me the constructive feedback on how to do better next time. And so, yeah, it's a powerful tool.
Yeah, and that's interesting because that almost ties into like continuous training. So rather than like, that like really common thought of like, okay, let's sit all the PMs down in this 1 day workshop where we all learn how to ask questions and then send them off to do it. Like, it's like, no, it takes that continuous training. And if PMs are able to can get that continuous feedback on their interviews, then they can slowly iterate and hone in on the places they need to improve upon. And that's like, it just makes what you're doing is like taking the negatives out of the democratization.
And stopping you being the bad guy, right? As well. It's like it's a system that's set up. It's supporting it. Some of these things might be a little bit annoying, and we can look at them, but some of these things are there for a good reason. And I think it also talks to one of our thematics, which is content and context, which is like the content around training or educational feedback should be relevant to the person when they're actually doing the action. So you can go and train everyone how to run research, on January 1, but someone's not doing any research until November 30. They don't remember any of that. That's all fallen out of their head. And so you need to find moments to do it in the moment.
Yeah, it's like in situ training, which is really difficult to do, like within the situation to train somebody, but it's the
Yes,
most impactful and effective way.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Amazing. Well, we are actually surprisingly coming up to the end of our time, which I know it just flies by. But I did have one kind of final question for you about, based on this conversation, or if you have another tip, what is one thing that people can do today, tomorrow, to just like get started with democratization in a really like empowering way?
So I think my number one piece of advice for someone that's trying to better bring democratization into their organization in an empowered way is to get close to the money. And actually, this is the advice for everyone, regardless of whether you're trying to democratize or you're just trying to get forward in your UXR career, is like get close to the money, which is really trying to better understand around your stakeholders what it is that they care about. So you talk to your product leaders, your marketing leaders, your design leaders, understand, do they feel like their people in their organization are as close to customers as they could be? What's holding them back? What are the things that are preventing them from doing this? Is it you as a bottleneck? Is it that they don't have access to participants? Is that they don't know how to go and find artifacts in a research repository? Like, what is it that's holding them back? And then if you can unlock that, then understanding from them, what will this mean for your organization, right? And what are their goals? They're like, well, we're trying to launch this initiative and it really needs to sing. And you're like, cool, what are you doing to better understand customers through that? Well, we've done X, Y, and Z. You're like, well, let's try and find more opportunities for you to get close to customers. How can we look to resource a panel or all these other things? And I refer back to Pedro Vargas from Banco do Brazil, who talks a lot about the researcher effort score, which is another piece of research that you can run to understand how people feel how hard it is for them to go and do each of these parts of research, and therefore can be a signifier 6 months later of impact that you've had on the organization, which is very important to bring to your performance reviews when you're going up for that next promotion or you're looking for that pay rise or whatever it is, and demonstrate impact in your organization. Also, will say getting close to the money, I think for me, is also about understanding who makes money in your organization and getting close to understanding what their problems are. So for me, I think that's sales, that's marketing. Those are so close to the money, which means they have massive budgets, which means it's really easy for them to pull more money to these things if you can solve their problems.
Yeah.
And so, as an example of this work that we do internally, is we run research to understand closed lost. Why did we lose this deal? Closed won. Why did we really win this deal? I know I won, but is it because we underbid, or actually our product was significantly better? How much better? And like that kind of thing you can kind of get from your sales organization, but actually an independent mind, a Sherlock Holmes coming in there and really digging through it is going to lead to a much better outcome. And that sales leader is you're giving them gold, pure gold. They're going to be asking, how can I get more of this? You're going to be inundated with demands for this kind of thing. Again, just get close to the money.
Yeah, yeah. And that like not only is amazing to be able to help so many different departments, but that broadens your influence then. You are no longer just a researcher who's doing research on a prototype. You are a
Yes,
researcher that
yes.
facilitates and enables your entire organization. And I would say that moment when I started working with sales and marketing, that was my turning point in my career because I went from
Mm,
prototype tester to a researcher across a strategic researcher.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And I love that term, strategic researcher. I think strategic researcher or growth researcher.
Yes.
I think ultimately everyone, not everyone, but a little bit of hyperbole, but everyone should become a growth researcher, should be thinking about how can I grow the organization? And it's about personal growth, organizational growth, it's about revenue growth. And I think when we put that hat on, then it's a mindset shift that can push everyone forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, amazing, Ned. Thank you so much. It was such a
Cool.
pleasure to talk to you today. I really, really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, amazing. And I'm gonna Of course, as always in the show notes, if anybody wants to see all of the links to Great Question, to follow Ned, those will all be in the show notes for everybody to see. And I just want to thank the audience as well for listening. We really, really appreciate it. And we will see you all next time.